Hello, I'm Brett Gilliland, host of the Circuit of Success podcast, and here's what's coming up on the show.
If you find yourself in a pattern of being taken advantage of by others, and I don't mean once or twice or every so often, it's going to happen if you're human, right? Unless you stay in the home and never leave. But I'm talking about a pattern of being taken advantage of. It's not because you're nice or because you're a giving person. It's because you're doing things in a certain way that creates the environment for you to be taken advantage of.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland, and I'm fired up today because I've got Bob Burg with me. Bob, how you doing?
Great. I'm fired up to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Hey, we got great taste already, I can tell. We got the same microphones.
That's right.
There's nothing but the best here, right? I mean, these are great mics. But well, you've probably seen this book before. For those of you watching, you can see it. For those of you not watching, you're listening. I'm holding up the book, The Go-Giver, a little story about a powerful business idea that Bob wrote and was co-author of. And it's a phenomenal book. I read this. I'm not just saying that because you're on the show. That's why I reached out to you to have you on the show, because I read the book, loved it, and highly recommend it to those avid readers like you obviously are. So, Bob, before we dive into all that stuff, you're obviously a thought leader, a speaker, an author. But if you can, just give us a little lay of the land. What's made you the man you are today, and what's gotten you onto the level of your success?
Well, I was very fortunate to be brought up by fantastic parents. So I think that's always an amazing advantage when you have that. And, I got into sales at a pretty young age, mid-20s, and began to grow from there. I learned and studied sales, which led to studying personal development, because that's such an important part of it. We know that success is built from the inside out, right? We build ourselves and it sort of manifests itself outwardly. So I really love that. And after some time of working my way up eventually to sales manager of a company, I began teaching others, or I was asked to come in and speak to some other sales groups. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Maybe I could kind of do a business like that, and learned how to do that. Joined the National Speakers Association and learned how to have a professional speaking practice. And from there, I've been very, very fortunate to do this for quite a while now.
That's great. So what made you write the book? Like, what stage of your career were you in when you wrote this?
Well,
I know you've written multiple books, but specifically, The Go-Giver.
Yeah. So it kind of starts back in the mid 90s when I had a book out called Endless Referrals, and the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was a how-to book on really showing entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They believed in what they did. They know they brought phenomenal value to those they serve, but they maybe didn't feel confident or comfortable going out into their local areas and developing the kinds of relationships with people where people would want to do business with them directly and or refer them to others. So Endless Referrals was a system. What is a system? Well, it's basically the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, right? If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and you'll get the desired result of B. That's what Endless Referrals was. Its basic premise was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And so that was sort of my first big book. Now, through the years, though, I'd always read business parables. And whether it was a long form one such as Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, or Klassen's Richest Man in Babylon, or all the great Blanchard and Johnson's 1 Minute series, and throughout the years, and there were always so many fantastic ones. And I always loved reading them because stories, I think we all know, connect on an even deeper level, right? Than how to. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take that basic premise, the know, like, and trust, and turn that into a story? And so I was lucky enough that that my editor-in-chief at a magazine I used to write for, John David Mann, had already had a reputation within his niche as a brilliant writer, author, storyteller. And I asked him if he would get together with me on this idea that I had. And it was a roughly sketched out idea for the Go-Giver. It certainly had not been developed, but he's a great writer. I'm a how-to guy. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. John's a magnificent storytellers. So, we collaborated on it. And that's really how the Go Giver started. And that
That's
came out,
great.
at the very end of 2007. So effectively 2008, and kind of gone from there.
Love it. So let's talk about the kind of the concept of the Go Giver. I think most of the times, especially on, in the world we live in today, it's all about the go getter. And but in your book, in this book, you paint a better picture of being the go giver as your first priority. So instead of the go getter, let's be the go giver. Hence the name of the book. So let's kind of set the stage for that. What's that mean to you?
So let's take it even a little deeper if we can.
Okay.
It always comes back to how we define terms, of course, right?
Absolutely.
And if you look at a go-getter as someone who's just focused on the getting, yeah, the go-getter wouldn't be. But what if we looked at a go-getter as just someone who takes action, right? Now we love that. We love people who take action, right? Because you've built a huge financial services investment practice, and yeah, you know that you can have the greatest ideas, the best thoughts, the greatest of intent, but unless action's put into the mix, nothing's going to happen. So we want people to be go-getters, people of action, and go-givers. Now, a go-giver is simply someone who understands that shifting their focus, and this is the key, shifting their focus from getting to giving is and in this case, when we say giving, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well, not for some kind of way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical reasons. Not at all. It's actually very logical, very rational. When you're that person, Brett, who can take your focus off yourself and instead place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire. When you can move off of yourself and focus on helping people solve their challenges, helping to bring them closer to happiness, people feel good about it. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. So it just is very natural. Now, so we would say this: be a go-getter and a go-giver, but don't be a go-taker. And
strong.
The go-taker, that's the person whose focus is just on the take, right? And it's take without having to add value, without thinking they have to add value to the person, to the process, to the situation. And they go takers tend to be very frustrated because they rarely achieve the kind of real massive success that they believe they deserve. But even when they do, and they do sometimes, it tends to not be very sustainable because it hasn't been built on a foundation that is very practical. Not that they can't keep doing it, but boy, is it a tough way to make a living. Yeah, repeating that, right? And so we would say, when you combine go getter and go giver, stay away from go taker. Now you've really got a situation where you're in a position to bring some immense value to others. And remember, and I think this is so key. I often say this when I'm speaking at a sales conference. It's the first thing I'll say, and that is, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, or even because you're a really nice person.
Nor do they really give a rip.
Right, exactly. They're going to buy from you only because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's great.
Yeah.
Because it means if you have a heart for serving others, you very naturally want to bring the best you can to another human being. And in that, creates that environment for that know, like, and trust to occur and the business to take place.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned the action part. That's one of the circuits of the circuit of success is action, right? People are like, you can sit around and, think about it, pray for it. It's going to happen. But, you still have to take action. You still got to go do it. And I love the fact that you don't skip out on that point of just saying, oh, give, because you do, even to give, right? Whether it's your time, your talent, your treasures, you still have to take action, right? I still got to show up to that event. Right. I still got to have it in my heart to write that check. So my question for you on this go giver part, because I gave a speech maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there was a group of young professionals there, and this guy in his low 20s asked me, what advice would you have now looking back after 2 decades for somebody in a position like his? And I said, take the meeting. take the meeting. I think so many times now in our world, people are like, well, what am I going to get paid for this? Or what am I going to get paid for that? And well, my time is worth X. I've spent a whole career. I've gone and done a million things for free, right? It doesn't mean you don't want to get paid for your time, but I also believe go, trust, have faith that good things can happen when you get out there. And my belief is that's probably what you mean by those endless referrals. And that's what's happened for me over 2 decades is to get referrals and build a business like that because you just go and you give and you have no concept of what's coming back for you.
A lot of times you don't. I say giving without attachment to the results, and because I expect good things all the time,
Yeah.
but you have to do it without attachment.
I love that.
And it doesn't mean we're not strategic. It doesn't mean we certainly don't have maybe a niche market that we're pursuing and that we're creating those relationships and so forth. It just means you leave yourself open. And now I do want to say one thing, because this brings up a question with a lot of people, only I think because of the name Go Giver or title, and that is, well, can you be taken advantage of if you do that? And it's a good question, and it's a human question to ask. And the answer is yes, anyone can be taken advantage of,
Sure.
because that happens in life sometimes. But if you find yourself, not you, but I mean, if a person finds themselves
Collectively.
in a pattern of being taken advantage of by others, and I don't mean once or twice or every so often, it's going to happen if you're human, right? Unless you stay in the home and never leave. But I'm talking about a pattern of being taken advantage of. It's not because you're nice or because you're a giving person. It's because you're doing things in a certain way that creates the environment for you to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And if that's you, my response is congratulations for realizing it and acknowledging it. Okay. Because you can go a whole life having things happen, and if you never give it the conscious thought and ask why, well, you keep repeating the same patterns.
Yep.
So if someone understands that this happens, then it's a matter of asking, okay, why? What is it that I'm doing, or how do I feel about myself? Or, what is this reason that this thing keeps happening? Whereas other people do all these great things and go out there and put themselves out. And not only do they not get taken advantage of, great things seem to come back to them all the time.
Yeah.
So we always have to go deeper and check our premises and understand why these things are happening. And it's always unconscious.
Yeah.
Right. It's always something we're setting ourselves up for, whether it's worthiness issues, whether it's not having the tools to know how to say no when it's appropriate to do so and how to do it tactfully and kindly, whether it's getting a payoff of being the victim and having people feel sorry for, different people have different reasons for doing different things. If you ever read the 1960s book, it was published in 1960, written by Maxwell Maltz, called Psycho-Cybernetics. Beautiful book. And he talked about how our belief system, which is unconscious by its very nature, our unconscious belief system absolutely drives our thoughts, our words, our actions, and we're not even aware of it until we make the unconscious conscious.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, it's where I was actually going to go next. So you led me right into it is so there's attitude, your belief system, your actions ultimately get you the results. That's the circuits of success I've talked about for so long.
Sure.
But I think your point is the beliefs, conscious or unconscious, they do lead you in that direction. So my question would be, for that man or woman listening to this now that may be younger in their career and they say, yeah, it's easy to say, go give now, Brett, or go give now, Bob, because you guys have become successful and you've done it. But what did you do early in your career? Or for the person that may still not be young, quote unquote, young in age, but they're young in their new business they've started. And they're like, gosh, I need this sale, right? I need to sell that widget so I can pay my mortgage next month. What advice you have for them?
Wonderful question. And it basically the question comes down to, this go-giver stuff sounds really nice. And, once I have the money and don't really need the business that much, then I'll focus on others and do all that, that great stuff. So there's a false premise at work here. And that false premise is that you're actually going to sell more, that you're going to sell better, that you're going to have more people wanting to do business with you because you're thinking about yourself and the money.
Yeah.
And it's just not right. It's just not true. Okay. So I would take a person through this exercise. Let's say you're the prospect and I'm the salesperson. and I need the money, or I'm just starting out.
Gotta have it. Yep.
Got to have that money. I need that money. I get, okay. So I'm going to go in there and that's my goal, is to transfer the money from your pocket to mine, is basically what it comes down to.
Yep.
Okay. Which I think comes across on some level to that person is doing it. And that when I was younger, we used to call that commission breath.
That's literally what I was getting ready to say. We called it that same thing. We probably got it from you.
And so, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to ask some questions, which I've been trained to ask because that's how you do it. But I'm not really listening to understand what Brett needs, wants, and desires. I'm listening so that I can have enough information to sharp angle you into a close and get your money. Okay. I'm going to, when you have an objection, I'm going to be a little defensive about it, probably, because that your objection standing in the way of this money that I need. So yeah, I'm going to go through the standard answers of the objections, and again, try to sharp angle you and overcome the objection, right? But there's sort of that attitude to it. I'm going to be closing early, and I'm going to be closing often because I need money.
Yeah.
And so at the end of this sales conversation, I would ask the question, are you going to be more likely, all things being equal, more likely or less likely to buy from me right now? And I would say probably less likely. So now let's take another situation. I'm the same person. I need the money. Okay. But here's what I'm going to do. Now, first, I'm not going to deny my self-interest, because successful people live in truths. They don't deny what's true.
Yep.
They don't get stuck on it. They utilize it in order to propel forward, but they acknowledge truths. And by the way, we're all self-interested, because that's how our cave person ancestors created more generations right. So we're self-interest. But what I'm going to do, Brett, is rather than act on this self-interest, I am going to temporarily suspend my self-interest so that I can put my focus totally on you. All right. So now I'm going to ask questions. But I'm not just asking questions. I'm now really listening. I'm listening with my entire posture, my body. And when you answer, I'm not assuming I know what you mean, because I realize we come from different belief systems. I realize I'm not my customer, and what I find to be of value may not be what they find to be of value. So I gently and tactfully ask clarifying questions to make sure that I understand exactly what you need, what you want, what you desire, that I can provide insights. It's going to help you strengthen areas where you're weak that you might not even know about, and be able to leverage strong areas that you may not even know about. Only once I totally know that I know your desires, am I going to connect the benefits of my product or service with what you're looking to accomplish. When you have an objection, I'm going to welcome that objection. And rather than give some standard answer, we're going to together work within the context of the objection in order to understand the root of it and where it's really coming from. And we're going to work through it together to advance the sale. Yep. And Brett, by the time I ask you to take action, okay, you're simply choosing to take action on something you've already told me that you want to do.
Yeah.
Mainly, you know that I have your well-being at heart. Now, the question again, all things being equal, are you more likely or less likely to buy from me than you were from the other?
Yeah. 100% more likely. And I think the key there is, I would say ADT, ask, don't tell. It's you asking great questions versus if you tell me I need this thing, you need this ink pen, Bob, you need this ink pen, versus asking me why I would need an ink pen and what that would do. I think that's a key concept right there.
And when you're desperate, you tell.
Yeah, you're right.
And so that's what I would say to that person, that understand that by focusing on the money, you're much less likely for that sale to take place. John David Mann and I say this, okay? Money is simply an echo of value. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value lightning. John said that. He's much more poetic than I am. Right? And what it really means, what it comes down to, Brett, is this: that your focus must be on the value you're providing that person. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you provided.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, Bob. So let's talk about your craft, right? I mean, you've done this for a long time, and whether it's writing books, speaking, coaching, whatever you're doing, how much time are you spending working on your craft? So working on you versus necessarily being in the weeds, working on a certain project for maybe a client. How much work are you doing on yourself?
Much more on myself because there's
Yeah.
so much I have to still work. I'm 64. I'll be 65 pretty soon, Brett.
Okay.
I can tell you, the older I get, the more I know how much I still need to work on.
Yeah.
I just think it's so important.
But
You
isn't
know,
that amazing? Because most would think you've got it figured out, right? I'm
oh,
64 years old. I'm successful. I'm this, I'm that. This guy's got it figured out, but we're all still working on it together.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's, I think, and this was the best thing that happened to me when I got in sales. It wasn't just the sales teaching. I studied, I got books by, and this is again back in the mid 80s, I think.
Yeah.
And I got books by Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, and I started, Brian Tracy, all these icons. I mean, just wonderful, fantastic teachers and amazing. And that was great. And it helped me a lot. But the best things they told me also was that I had to read other books. And I had to read the How to Win Friends and Influence People. I had to read The Magic of Thinking Big. I had to read Think and Grow Rich. I had to read,
Let me interrupt. For those listening right there, go rewind this 15 seconds and write down every book he just mentioned. They're all phenomenal.
Thank you. I'll tell you another one too. Forgive me, for those watching on the screen, I just moved my microphone and reached for another book. One of the greatest books too, and another one that I just think is a must read. I didn't learn about this one till maybe 2003 or something. But the Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. It was written in 1910. They just did a retro version, they call it, and this is actually his original writing. So a lot of people have, because the copyright ran out, a lot of people redid the book and put their own things on, which is okay, but I always like the original. And
sure.
So this retro version that you can see on at Amazon is the best one to get, written in 1910. And yeah, while his focus where he does talk about getting rich in terms of financial, it's all areas of life. You can't really excel in one without it carrying over in a sense when they're principle based, universal laws. So when we talk about success, we're talking about sure financial, but also physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, social, what have you. And this is I probably read this book 35, 40 times. It's very short, and it just has such magnificent information. But you have books like one of the best of all time is a book written in I think this was written in 1906. It's called Peace, Power, and Plenty by Orison Swett Marden. He was actually the founder of Success Magazine. And many people consider him the father of the modern day personal development movement. I couldn't even, this is a original edition. I couldn't even write in it. I had to just do write on the little yellow sticky notes. But, you think about it, the title, Peace, and he's talking about inner peace, power, which is the power over oneself, not over others. Okay. But power over oneself, the ability to master one's emotions. And it's just so, and then plenty, which is what? Prosperity. So you've got
that's solid.
Every page is a gem, and it has. So I think when we look at continuing to develop ourselves, we can never go wrong, right? Because there's so much fantastic information out there.
Yeah. That's incredible. So let's talk about that. I you hear that all the time, the chicken or the egg, right? Which is it, the chicken or the egg, and which comes first? But in your book, you talk about that typically the more successful people, and I'm reading this from the book. I can't remember what page it's on, but it says typically the more successful people are, the more they are willing to share their secrets with others. Right. And I used quotes over secrets because really there is no secret. Yeah. There's no secret. Right.
that was more, what do you call it when you take writers, when you're being more, I can't even think of the word, but there's no secret.
No, absolutely. But again, my chicken and the egg concept is because it is the person that's willing to share. Are they successful because they're willing to share, or are they successful therefore they're willing to share? I have my philosophy, so I'd love to know yours.
Yeah, mine is, and I'm not sure which is the chicken or which is the egg part, but
exactly
how a person is that dictates what they do. So, when we talk about somebody who, let's say somebody gives a lot to charity. Okay. Typically they were giving to charity when they were making almost nothing.
Yep.
Okay. Very rarely is there somebody who's not charitable, all of a sudden has a successful business and they're making millions and millions. And then all of a sudden they become very charitable, and very rarely, unless they're doing it to show off or for some ulterior motive.
Right.
No, typically, money just makes us more of what we already are. And so, so someone who has a giving spirit and a giving name, that's how they built their business. Right. And so it's that person who, and this goes back to that young person you're talking about, or that person even who's young in their new career, who says, well, I've got to get something going. I've got to get something started. Okay, good. Find a way to bring value to others. Yeah, both your direct marketplace, but also everyone else. Okay. And because everything connects in some way. Yeah. And so find ways, discover, and also understand that what you believe to be of value isn't necessarily what they believe to be of value.
Yep.
Value is value, which is different than price, right? Price is a dollar amount. But value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder.
Yeah.
What is it about this thing, this product, this service, this concept, this idea that brings so much worth to someone that they will willingly exchange whether it's money, time, energy, friendship, what have you, for this, right?
Yeah.
And both people come out way ahead.
Yeah.
So, but value is always in the eyes of the beholder. So it's not what we think is of value or what we think they should think of value. And that's why it's so important, as you talked about earlier, to ask questions and listen.
Yeah.
We can't know because we're not them.
Yeah. And I think there's just something about giving back. I mean, I've been around tons of people that are like, yeah, I'm not going to tell this part of my process or this part, the scarcity mentality of, I know this one thing on how I sell this widget, right? But then they don't share it. And I don't think that's the abundance mentality we're looking for. Just a few more things here for you. So, I think we all know this, right? What we focus on, we get. What we focus on expands. All those things, no matter how you say it. If I were to follow you around every day, what am I watching Bob focus on daily without miss?
I think that generally, Brett, what I try to do is make people feel encouraged, make people feel genuinely good about themselves. I picked that up from my dad. I consider myself carrying on my dad's legacy because that's what he did so well, right? And so I think that's kind of where I am. But again, when I do something like that, I'm doing it for selfish reasons, and that reason is I feel good about myself.
Yeah.
Right. So, I have this saying, when I define happiness, right? And, happiness by dictionary definition is the mental feeling of well-being. And I think that works. It's a good definition. But I go a little deep. I say that happiness is a genuine and ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with one's values.
Hmm.
So if you value a certain thing, so you've helped a lot of people invest and you've done very well by helping people do that. But when you help someone and you know that you have really helped them to take care of their financial future, to be able to leave a legacy for their kids or for charities, or to have a life where they don't have to be in worry all the time, when you do those, you feel good. That's selfish, not the money you're making.
Right.
Great thing, but that's not why you do it. You do it because it's congruent with your values.
Yeah.
You feel good about yourself when you do that.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we talk about that here at our firm, Visionary Wealth Advisors, that vision aligned and values aligned. If those two things aren't congruent, even if I was trying to hire you, right, as an advisor at Visionary, if our vision and values are not aligned, it's never going to work, right? It's going to be oil and water. I always say our vision and our values are like a magnet. I remember my kids' trains when they were little, right? The magnet either connects or it repels, right? You try to connect it and it just won't do it. And if our vision and values are connected and aligned, they're going to connect and they're going to do very well. We're going to have an interdependent relationship. That's what works in life, in anything, right? What would you tell yourself what you know now to be true, but maybe you didn't know it on the climb, right? That journey, whether you were in your 30s, your 40s, whatever. What do you know now to be true that you didn't know at the time?
I'd probably go back to my early 20s, and an older, more mature Berg would tell young Berg first, shut up, stop talking, because you don't know anything near what you think you know. And to paraphrase that great saying, it's credited to Mark Twain. I don't know that Mark Twain actually said it, but it's brilliant, so it sounds Twainian. You know, we credit things.
Yeah.
But apparently he said it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you're absolutely sure you do know that just ain't so. That was me. I absolutely thought I had it figured out. I absolutely thought I understand humans. I understand how things work. I get this world. I know it. I did. There was so much I did.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you doing to be a student of the game? Like for me, I jokingly call this, but I'm really serious too, is this is my weekly therapy. I get to learn from, experts all over the world, like yourself. But what do you do to be a student of the game, to keep working on your craft?
I constantly read, constantly discuss. It's funny. We have a online Go Giver community, and part of that is a mastermindy group called the Go Giver Success Alliance, and we've got these really successful people that take part in this every Wednesday at Rachel's famous coffee cafe with Rachel's from the book, right?
Yeah, right.
And there's so many great people on there, and people think I'm, no, it's not. It's not me teaching. It's everybody learning from one another. And I mean, it just charges my batteries. I come away from that thing and it's like, holy cow, that was great, because I learned this from Jeff West, who was like one of the leading Aflac leaders in the world. And I learned this from, this person who was a great realtor at that. And I learned this from so-and-so, and so that to me, I get to just learn from all these other people.
That's awesome. Great stuff. Who you surround yourself with matters, right? So Bob, where can our listeners find more of you? I know you've got a website. You want to share that?
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy, and my name is spelled Burg, and that's actually my website, burg.com.
Burg.com, Burg.com. Are you on social media at all?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say everywhere, but that's not true, because it's like all these different things.
Right.
Probably, LinkedIn, Twitter,
Yeah.
Facebook, but LinkedIn is probably the best place to.
Awesome. We'll put all the stuff in the show notes for our listeners. Tons of takeaways for me. We didn't even get to the 5 laws of stratospheric success, but the law of value, the law of compensation, the law of influence, authenticity, and receptivity, right? Those are 5 amazing things. If you're watching, go pick up this little red book right here called The Go Giver. It's phenomenal. You'll love it. And Bob, it's been great having you on the Circuit of Success.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.